But I know that it's because of God's grace and God's love for me and for all mankind that He chooses to speak to us. To speak truth to you, to tell you I love you no matter who you are. I want to give you something that this world cannot. I want to lift you up because this world is only going to tear you down. There's a story about this kid. This kid was born to a woman who was told she would never have children. The quote-unquote miracle baby. And when the child Samuel was weaned, he was about 1 or 2, maybe 3 years old, she takes him to the temple and she gives him to the priest. Not like give him to the priest to like, hey, will you pray over my son? But she literally says, he's yours now. I promised God I would give him. Now our culture, we don't really understand that. That's called abandoning your kid. But in their culture, it was this symbolic thing of saying, I want God to do everything and anything through my child. And the Bible says this little boy had no real relationship with God at the time. That he was just kind of there, sweeping and mopping, probably getting this guy Eli, who was the temple priest, probably getting him food, basically just being like an assistant. Not doing anything amazing. He had no real relationship with God. And one night, this little boy is laying down at the foot of the Ark of the Covenant, and he hears a voice. Samuel. So the little boy wakes up and he assumes that it's this old priest. He can't see anymore. He probably needs a drink of water. So Samuel stands up. He walks into the priest's room and he goes, here I am. You called me. And Eli goes, dude, I didn't call you. Go back to sleep. Don't wake me up again. So the little boy walks back into where the Ark of the Covenant was held. He lays down at the foot of it. He falls back asleep. And the second time he hears it, Samuel. So the little boy wakes up again, goes into Eli's room and says, hey, you woke me up. What do you need? I'm here. And Eli goes, dude, go back to sleep. I didn't call you. Third time it happens. And this after the third time, Eli finally understands, like, God is speaking to this kid. In a very audible way in which this kid can hear the voice of God. This kid who has no relationship really with God. This kid who just kind of hangs out in the most beautiful and most holy place that the Jewish people had. His relationship with God was superficial at best. And yet God is crying out to him saying, Samuel, calling his name, asking him to do something greater. And Eli finally realized that, and he goes, okay, kid, this is what I want you to do. When you go back to sleep, if this voice, God, says anything to you again, I want you to say, here I am, Lord. What do you want of me? And so this is what happens. In those days, messages from the eternal were rare, and sacred dreams or visions were given to very few. 1 Samuel 3:1. Not everyone had the opportunity. In fact, very few people had the opportunity to hear anything from God. Even the people who were supposed to teach the people about God didn't hear from Him. And now this young boy is hearing the voice of God very clearly. The voice of God in those days, it says, was very rare. People didn't have epiphanies, if you will. People didn't have dreams. People didn't have words that God wanted to tell the people. It was a time in which God was silent for whatever reason. And yet this boy begins to hear the voice of God. And then it goes on to say this in chapter 3. It says, pay attention. I'm about to do something amazing in Israel, that it will sting the ears of everyone who hears it. You see, once again, Samuel is lying there. God calls him a fourth time, and Samuel goes, here I am, Lord. What do you want of me? And God says, Samuel, you kid, I'm about to do something that's so amazing that people around here won't even be able to understand it. I'm going to do something that's so big and so absolutely amazing that everyone on earth will have heard of it. And it's going to start with you. See, sometimes, like we talked about last week, with this guy named Elisha, you don't really hear the voice of God except in your soul, and He's calling you to something greater. He's saying, I have something for you. I need you to do it. Don't listen to the world. Listen to me. Give up all that you have and follow me, because the world's things are going to fall apart. They're going to die. They're going to let you down. But God will never do that. And so we saw that Elisha literally gave up everything and began to follow God. Now we see a little boy who literally hears the voice of God, and the voice of God says this, I'm going to do something so amazing, and I'm going to start with you. What are you going to do now? I want to change this place. I want to change these people. I want to do something completely revolutionary. My priests have been perverted, and my priests have gone away from the ways of God, and I'm going to start something brand new, Samuel, and it's with you. And a lot of times I feel like God is putting a calling on you as a generation. And He's saying, look, I need you to change. I need you to do something different. I need you to swallow your pride and follow me, God. Because I need you to do something very different. Because this generation is falling away from God. The voice of God is speaking to you, and He's saying, step up. Stop being selfish. Stop living for only you. Stop living for the things of this world. Stop falling apart when everything around you falls apart, because the God that lives inside of you is greater than the things of this world. God is bigger. God can handle it. And He's saying, I want to do something amazing in and through you. Now step up and do it. It's exactly what He said to Samuel. It's exactly what Jesus said to the 12 disciples. It's exactly what Peter says to the church and what Paul says to the church. And it reverberates through time, and it reverberates through words, and it reverberates through all cultures and societies. And it goes down to your heart, and God says, I want to do something amazing in you. Let's do it. Stop what you're doing and live solely for me. Because the whisper of God can resonate in the lives of anyone. Even the one who doesn't know Him, God will speak, and they will understand, and they will come to know Him. The one who's running away from God, who doesn't necessarily want anything to do with Him, God will speak, and they will change their life, because in the words of God come life. Whether He's yelling and screaming at you, or whether He's whispering to you, the words of God scream life. And He's asking you to be something greater. Let me rephrase that. He's commanding you to be something greater. You will change a world, whether for good or for bad, but you will change a world. God is calling your name over and over again, and we can't hear it, or we choose to ignore it because we're so caught up in the things of this world and the patterns of just everyday living that we find ourselves too busy to hear the whisper of God. And He's saying, I want you. I want you to do something great, so that all your community, all of the world will hear of it, and they will know that it is from me, God. But it starts with you, and it starts with me actually listening.